Hello and welcome to the Essential Property Podcast with your hosts, Paul Samuda and Amanda Woodward. With 45 years of combined experience in the world of property buying, selling, investing and developing, they are here to share with you their knowledge in the Stoke-on-Trent, Newcastle-under-Lyme and Crewe property market. Let's get started.
Hello, Amanda here. Good evening. I have just completed a HMO application form and I thought it would be a good idea to share with you the process of applying for a HMO licence in today's market. I'm going to give examples of the HMO licences with Stoke-on-Trent City Council and also Cheshire East for Crewe. However, the similar process will apply across all councils throughout the country, just I'm sure a few little unique differences along the way. So we've had quite a few renewals this year. I think we're on application number 9 for 2025, a mix of new apps and renewals. So I'm going to go through the process, especially if you're new to HMOs. I think you'll find this useful. You may be doing your HMO application yourself, or you may have your agent doing it. Either way, it's good to bring yourself up to speed. So first things first, what actually constitutes a licensable HMO? So in 2018, mandatory HMO licensing came in. And in any properties that had 5 bedrooms or more that would class themselves as a HMO needed to apply for the licence. Now, previously that was 7 beds or more, but when mandatory HMO licensing came in, it meant 5 beds or more. So a lot of people around the country needed to apply for their licences. So that covers most of the HMOs that we look after. Now, you go onto the local authority's website, you're looking for the online HMO application form. First, check the fees. In Stoke, it's give or take £800. In Crewe, it's give or take £1,000 for up to 6-bed HMO. And then the more bedrooms that you add, the higher the fee. Generally, they last 5 years, they do for us. I remember when Crewe first came out with this and they were issuing 2-year licenses, which was a little bit naughty because that's very expensive. That was just for the first license, but generally now they're for 5 years and onwards. So you establish, yes, I do need one. You need to apply for the license before the 5th person moves into the property. You're completely allowed to have up to 4 living in there without the license. But as soon as that 5th person's ready to move in, get that license application in and validated before that 5th person actually moves into the property. So you know that you need a licence, you're on the government's website or the local authority's website, you've checked out your fees, you're then ready to apply for the licence. So what you need to establish at this point is who is going to be the licence holder and who is going to be the property manager. And that's for the purpose of the licence. So the licence holder generally is the owner. Property manager is then your agent, but you are asked to complete a fit and proper test to be a licence holder and to be able to meet HMO management regulations. So for example, if you are based in Singapore or Hong Kong or Australia or South Africa or all around the globe, like many of our investors, Cheshire East Council don't deem you fit and proper to be able to be the licence holder because you're not close enough to what's happening on the ground to be able to make key decisions. So they suggest that you delegate the licence holder responsibility to the agent, and that's what we generally tend to do. Stoke-on-Trent, as an example, are not too fussed on that point, and they're happy for the owner, no matter where they're based, either a person or a company, to be the licence holder. That's just a unique difference between the two. So once you've established licence holder and once you've established agent, you can then start to complete the forms of all of the contact details and personal information about those two entities. It will then go on to ask you about if there is a mortgage on the property, who the mortgage provider is, because the local authority can decide to update that lender with regards to your licence status. So on the basis that you have a HMO mortgage, which you should, that shouldn't be a problem. So let's say you're got a mortgage with Paragon, then you need to put down Paragon Bank and their address details on the mortgage application. It then asks you a lot of questions about whether you're a fit and proper person, whether you have any criminal history, and whether you are really fit to be the owner of and manager or license holder of this HMO license. Once you've completed that, it then starts to ask you lots of questions about the property. So it will be asking you about its central heating system, if it's gas or if it's electric. It will be asking you about your safety elements like your smoke alarms, your emergency lighting, fire blankets. It'll ask you how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many occupants. It will ask you how many lounges, and it's just going through and assessing the property. Once you've done that, it's then going to start to ask you about your processes. So, do the tenants pay rent and they're on an AST? Do they have a rent booklet or not? Which is obviously a very old-fashioned question, but it still gets asked. Does the tenant get an inventory? Do the tenants have to pay a deposit? How do you reference the tenants? How do you manage antisocial behaviour? Is the manager or the owner or the license holder part of any professional bodies? Have they done any property training? Are they a member of the PRS or the NRLA, etc., etc.? So it's a whole kind of warts and all disclosure in terms of the competence of the people that are going to be involved in the license. And then when you get to the end of the license, obviously you need to pay the fee, and that application then goes through to the local authority. They pick that up usually straight away. It then gets allocated to a HMO officer. Someone in the housing standards team will then contact you to say thank you for your application, finalise the payment if it wasn't made at the time. Perhaps you might be making a bank transfer. And then the local on the ground operation starts. Okay, so yes, you've done your paperwork, that's fine. But now we have to think about what's going to actually happen inside the property when the HMO officer comes to visit. So just prior to that visit and at the end of the application, there is a lot of documentation that needs to be provided to validate what it is that you've said in your application. So I'm just going to run through the documents that you need to provide at the time of application to validate the application. So some of them will be dead easy and you'll know them. Some of them might just be a little bit more obscure that you haven't dealt with before. So you're going to need to provide your annual gas safety certificate. That's a no-brainer, along with your 5-year electrical installation condition report. Now, if you've got a property that's less than 5 years old, you would have had that when the property was first renovated and the electrics were installed. And if it's older than 5 years, you would just have your 5-year renewal certificate. Okay, so gas and electric, that's simple. The HMO officer will also want to see that annually you are pat testing the portable appliances in the property. And that means things like the fridge, things like the washing machine, the kettles, the toasters. Are they being tested every year to make sure that they're safe? They will also want to see an annual or a 6-monthly fire alarm service certificate. So when it comes to smoke alarms in HMOs, 3 stories or more, or just big HMOs, will likely have a panel system or an addressable system where you have detectors in all the rooms, and then you have a fire panel, usually by the front door, which is digital. And it talks to you with regards to where the fires are and if there's any faults on the system and so on. Those systems need to be tested weekly and then need to be serviced every 6 months. If you just have regular smoke alarms in each bedroom and they are interlinked and have a battery backup, then those need to be tested annually, or should I say serviced annually. They need to be tested monthly in terms of the push button, but then they need to be serviced annually. And that's when you have an electrician or a competent person on site who is using fake smoke to blow into the smoke alarms. They are using a hairdryer to provide heat. They will be making sure that they are all interlinked. They'll be changing the batteries and they'll be giving them a good old service to make sure that they're good for the next year. So whichever option you have, that needs to be serviced and in a document. And the same applies for the emergency lighting So emergency lighting also needs to be serviced annually, and there needs to be a certificate of that. That service involves an electrician. Again, they come round, they do a drain test on the battery, they check that the emergency lighting stays on longer than 3 hours, which I always thought was quite a strange test, because if there's a fire in a building and you need to exit that building quickly using the emergency lights, I can't imagine it's going to take anyone 3 hours to leave a 3-bedroom house or a 5-bed HMO. But there we go. It has to stay on for longer than 5 hours, and they have to be tested to make sure that they're safe and working. Again, that comes with a service certificate. HMO officer will want to see that as well. We also send over the EPC to make sure that the EPC is as per the minimum criteria. And also you will be requested for building control certificate. So if your property did require change of use from a house to a HMO, you would have more than likely, not always, but more than likely got building control involved to sign off that work. If you've got multiple en suites, or you've built an extension, or you've taken the chimneys out, you've done significant works, hopefully building control would have signed that off, and then that can go to the HMO officer as well. If you haven't got that because you haven't done much work to the property, perhaps you've just added the fire doors, the layout was as it is, then you wouldn't necessarily have that. So just talk to your HMO officer to see, is that actually something that you need or not. They will require a floor plan for the property. They're going to want to see visually where the rooms are, where the en suites are. And that helps to make their physical visit a lot easier, because they don't have to draw it out from scratch. A measured plan would be even better. So then they can check that the single rooms are bigger than 6.5 square meters, that the double rooms are bigger than 10. And it just makes that visit on the day just flow that little bit easier. More recently, we have been asked for fire risk assessments for the properties, which isn't necessarily a new thing. We should always have fire risk assessments in place for HMOs, but it's something that since the Fire Safety Order 2005 was updated, it means that we now have to ensure that we've got them on file for all HMOs, that they're reviewed annually. Sometimes people in the council will ask for them, sometimes not. It just depends. But we have to make sure that we have those as well. HMO officer will also ask for your tenancy agreements, or certainly a draft, so they can have a look at the sort of agreement you have with your tenants. They're going to ask for some ID for you. They're also going to ask for a DBS check both for the HMO manager and the licence holder. When I say that, Stoke-on-Trent actually don't ask for the DBS check. It's only Cheshire East. So your local authority may or may not. That's just something that you need to consider. Maybe you just do a self-declaration on your application, but Cheshire East specifically want that DPS. The annoying thing is that a DPS only lasts 3 months, so we have to keep regularly getting them, which is a little bit annoying, because the government you have to go through this whole process on the .gov.uk website. But there we go, and we have to pay every time. But there we go, to make sure that we don't have a criminal record, and we're not wanted, and those kind of things, and make sure that we're fit and proper. And that is it. So let's just do a quick recap. Gas cert, electrical cert, PAT test, smoke alarm, emergency lighting, EPC, building control, floor plans, fire risk assessments, tenancy agreements, DBS check, and ID. And that's pretty much it. If you are working with an agent, then the HMO officer might want to see the management agreement between yourself and the agent. And that's really about seeing what authority that the agent has over the property. So if you've got a HMO agent running the building, you want that management agreement to show that the agent has got the ability to fix hazards, to be able to spend the landlord's money within reason to fix emergencies, because that's what the HMO team want to see, that whoever is in charge does actually have the power to be able to keep that property safe for the tenants that are living there. And it's all about safety. Clean, tidy, well-maintained, safe buildings. That's what the HMO team want. So you've done your application, you've prepared all your paperwork. Let's now skip forward to the actual visit. So at this point, you don't have your licence. You're still in application stage. Then the day comes when the HMO officer comes to visit the property. Now, if you're new to this can be quite daunting. But once you get to know your HMO officer and you understand the sorts of things that they're looking for, you can prepare for that as much in advance as you can. So they will be looking to validate effectively what's on the application and then check things in person. So they'll be checking for a thumb turn lock on the front and back door, as an example, to make sure that a key is not required to leave the property in an emergency. They're looking to make sure that you've got your FD30 fire doors on your bedroom doors, your lounge, your kitchen, wherever the escape route takes you through the building, the intermission strips, the door closers, the thumb turn locks. In the kitchen, they're looking for the extraction, they're looking for the fire blanket, possibly fire extinguishers, depending on your local authority. In Stoke and Crewe, we don't need the extinguishers for a HMO because there isn't any staff that are trained on the site to use them. They're also just looking for any other defects that could potentially cause a hazard or cause a problem to the tenants. So we've got to make sure that the garden is, clean and tidy. We don't have any slates about to fall off the roof. The gutters are clear. The drains are clear. So whilst it is mainly focused on tenant health and safety and probably more skewed to fire safety, there is just a general check of the property as well. And I'd say you're going to be in the property for about a good hour. So do give yourself enough time, turn up early, make sure that you've got all the information with you that you need, and allocate about an hour to do so. Then when the HMO officer has completed their visit, most of the time they will then email you a few days later, say, it was great to meet with you. These are the things that I've picked up on the visit that I would like you to change or that I would like you to upgrade to comply with your license. And at that point, they'll then issue your draft license. Now, the draft license lasts for 14 days. And it's effectively sort of a notification to all parties involved to say, we're thinking of giving a licence to this party. Does anybody object? Now, fingers crossed, in 15 years, we've never had anybody come back to say, we object to this licence. But that's just the process. And then 14 days later, you get your licence. And the first time you get your licence is actually quite exciting. But when you've done this, I don't know, almost 100 times over, it just becomes a little bit more of a formality. And you have to make sure that you track your dates, make sure that your expired licenses are applied for at the right time so they can stay in date and stay renewed. And it becomes just a very much an administrative process thereafter. Now, the HMO officer will then at some point want to come back to the property to make sure that anything that they've suggested as an upgrade is then completed. That then gets signed off. And you probably won't then hear from the HMO officer until your renewal, unless there's any issues with the property that get reported during the next 5 years. You may, after 3 or 4 years, be asked for a compliance visit. But generally speaking, after that visit, you should be good for the remainder of the licence. And it's incumbent upon you, the licence holder, the owner and the property manager to meet those HMO regulations, to inspect the property, to keep on top of the property as best you can to ensure that you keep the conditions of the licence at the forefront of what you're doing, which sometimes can be difficult because we have tenants that don't always play ball. And we just have to keep on top of that the best that we can. Your license needs to be displayed inside the property on the notice board, and on the notice board you'll also need to make sure that you've got the contact details for the property manager, along with the gas cert, along with the license, along with information on how to exit in the event of a fire. All that needs to be information on the wall for any guests to be able to read. Okay? So that is the whistle-stop tour on applying for a HMO licence. Many years ago, it was a little easier than this. It was kind of an application form. Really, you just sort of said the gas cert and the electrical cert, and that was it. Things have got a little bit more detailed over time, which is fine. We want to make sure that the tenants are safe. That's actually our main priority. We've got to make sure that they're safe. They are not at any risk, certainly not of fire, but just general health and safety as well. A happy home is often a good and profitable home as well for tenants to live. So yeah, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will point any new HMO landlords that contact me to this episode, because I think it just gives you a quick summary of what's involved. For our landlords that we work with on a management basis, we will apply for the HMO license for you. So we'll do the application, get all the documents, meet the HMO officer, get the draft license, the main license, and we'll do the lot. It's up to you what you want to do. You might do it yourself. You might ask your agent to do it. As long as you've got one, that is the most important thing. A lot of people in investment areas don't have HMO licenses. Please do not be that person. The fines are very expensive for those that try to beat the system and don't apply. Don't be that person. Make sure you conform. Make sure you follow all the regulations. This is a business not for messing around, not for playing in. It's really is a business for doing things properly. So I hope you've enjoyed that episode, and I will see you on the next.